Hello.
Hello.
Welcome to the Factory Floor Cuts. I'm Henry Raby.
My name's Natalie Quatermass.
We are Vandal Factory.
Factory.
Now, normally, the Vandal Factory podcast features interviews, music, features, poems, and often we have to do a bit of editing to make sure everything fits into an episode.
So the Factory Floor Cuts are a way for us to share the full, unedited interview for your listening pleasure.
You're going to hear our chat with Shareefa Energy, who is an indomitable poet, facilitator, and activist. We chatted to her before her gig at the Say Out Slam in York at the Crescent.
But we're not going to give you everything you want on a platter. If you want to hear a poem by Shareefa and a song that she chose for the podcast, head over to episode 25 of the Vandal Factory podcast.
So please subscribe, find us on social media, leave us a 5-star review, share with all your friends and family and enemies.
Tell us that you are listening. Leave a comment. I want to know who you are. When are you listening? Where are you listening? Tell your friends. Tell a friend. Just pick one friend and tell them. That would double our listenership. Think about it. Come on!
Here's Shareefa. We are in the green room of the Crescent here in York, one of my favouriteest venues. Natalie's never been here before.
I've not been backstage before, but I appreciate a green room when it's actually green.
Now, we've got a very special guest here with us, and I feel very underdressed because, Natalie, you're out for the gig. You've got your lovely dress on. Yeah. And we've got Shareefa Energy, who is wearing the most gorgeous blue dress.
Blue?
Yeah.
Glamorous. Should you hand it over for me to describe the outfit? Electric blue. I'm going to say shiny, but that makes me sound like a 6-year-old. And now I'm going to pass it back to you to describe.
Hello, Shareefa Energy.
Hey, thank you so much. When have we've never spoken about clothes or what someone is wearing. Can you tell?
No, it's, I appreciate you describing it. People can't see. But...
Do you always... Is this your look when you do any gig, or is it just for the slam tonight?
I try, especially if I'm headlining, I try to make a bit of effort because I think it just looks a bit more. Yeah. You just look like an entertainer for the evening, and I'm not just there, just like looking slouchy as usual.
The look matters always for even if we don't think that we're putting on a costume, we're all putting on a costume. Definitely. All the time. But I was just thinking about even when I've gone there straight away. Even when you're protesting, I have a costume that I go and put on because I feel like I'm going to perform and think about what it is that we're putting out there. But we'll talk more about protesting a little bit later on. Is this your first time in York?
Yes, it is. I'm excited to be here because it just looks like I really like the cherry blossom trees.
Oh, they're so beautiful.
In York, I was like, oh, that's so beautiful, and it's really warm.
Yeah.
I've actually wrote something about it that you can hear later.
Oh, that's lovely.
I just had to scribble something, so I'll share it with you guys.
Oh, that's so great. I love that. If you were here 4 weeks ago, you would have seen the York walls that are circular and they're lifted up on a mound, and the whole mound have daffodils that come out, and so there's an entire strip of yellow that goes around York, and they've all faded now, but then the cherry blossom comes, and so it's all lovely. Yeah, no, it's really beautiful.
So Shareefa, for our listeners, you are a poet and an activist and a community facilitator. Is that a term? Community facilitator? Organizer. I wanted to ask, what was the spark for that to go, I'm going to go out there and do poetry and be in front of people, but also I want to be sort of behind the scenes and encourage people and encourage them to be writers and facilitators themselves?
For me, starting to share and perform poetry, I think just in my early 20s, feeling quite frustrated at the landscape when it came to patriarchy and stuff, and navigating as a young woman. I just felt like I wanted to take up the space rather than just be frustrated because men are not vocalizing certain things or they're ignoring certain aspects, but because I was like, well, this is my experience as a woman of color and a young woman, so I need to step up and take up that space, because I'm instead of complaining about things not existing or the narrative not being the way that you want it to be, I'm you have to kind of take the microphone. And I just feel like, especially coming from a very marginalised community from Highfields in Leicester, I just feel like more of us need to have our voices out there. Like our reality is never part of the conversation. So even on the way here, I was reading a book about a lot of resistance in the 80s and the riots and different things that happened after the New Crossfire and other kind of things. And I just feel like even my area was not mentioned. But even then I was like, Highfields had big riots, and the impact of that, you can still feel it today, you know? So I was like, instead of complaining that, oh, why are we not mentioned? I'm like, it's our job to mention it. And, you know, I see it as like as poets, we're the frontline news reporters for our communities. And at the same time, for me, I really feel it's important to have like an authentic voice. So even then, like for me, I don't just want to be someone that's speaking on behalf of people seeking asylum or migrant communities or whoever it is. I'm like, here, I do workshops in immigration detention centres, people seeking asylum, and very marginalised communities, and people in prison, people who've released from prison. And for me, it's more the case of like empowering them. I don't believe in there's such a thing as the voiceless people. People are made to be voiceless. They're preferably unheard, like Arundhati always said. And I just feel like even when I've been to Palestine, 2011, I did workshops. 2022, I did workshops. So it was mainly to just support young people to be able to articulate themselves and share their voices and share their stories, because I was like, this is your job to do, rather than thinking anyone else is going to do it or that anyone else is better to say it. Because even now, with everything happening in Gaza, like there's so many people that are like, oh, the Western journalists, they're not able to get in, and that's a really problematic. But I'm like, but Palestinian journalists who know their local community, who know the streets, the same way if I ask you, where shall I go in New York? People know what streets to tell me where to go to. They're the best people to be telling the full story. And it shouldn't be that we expect people with British passports, white people, to be the ones to articulate what's happening in Gaza. Like, what is that? Isn't that part of the dehumanisation process? So I think again, like, of course we can amplify and we can add different perspectives to stories, but I think the authentic voice has to come from the people rather than speaking over people.
And yeah, I couldn't agree more. And you started off by talking about taking up space and taking the mic. Do you remember that first time that you took the mic and what that felt like?
Oh gosh. Yeah, I remember I performed somewhere. It was like a really long spoken word piece that I wrote. And I think people in there, they were really encouraging. There was like people in there saying, oh, you changed, like afterwards, oh, you changed my life from the piece that, you know, I was like, well, what are you talking about? Or you just think people are being nice.
Where were you?
In London somewhere. I can't remember the specifics because I feel like a few of them are muddled together. Like, I can't remember the exact first time because I've been writing since I was like 13. Right. I used to write lyrics just to express myself when I was upset. But yeah, I feel like that in itself, just getting like a bit of more encouragement. Jadra Sos, he's a rapper, community guy. He runs like a studio in Brixton. He really encouraged me, you know, to just be like, do what you got to do. And he put me on a headline for like Poetry Love, and I was like, oh. I was like, okay, this is serious now, you know. And but at that time I was just supporting, like facilitating workshops. But before that I'd already done workshops in like Palestine, in Sierra Leone, in the community as well. So yeah, I think it's just a little encouragement goes a long way. And I think that's for all generations, you know. And I think especially for older generations, it's still important to encourage them. They still need validation in other ways. They still need encouragement. They still need, you know, women to talk about menopause or whatever it is that they want to talk about. Very stereotypical example. But I mean, you know, like just the there's so many different experiences that still need to be heard.
Yeah, and we've got that in common, by the way, because you've been to the Freedom Theatre.
Yeah.
So have I. I was there, so I think I was in the middle of the two times you went, because I was there in 2015 and 2016.
Okay.
So yeah.
I went in 2022. So when I was in Palestine the first time, I didn't go there.
Oh, right.
I was at Underjar University in Nablus. Yeah.
You said to me in a message preparing your set, and you were like, there's so much to talk about in the world. And sometimes, because like I'm a big fan of punk music, and your punk bands, they go, right, we'll write a song about the police, we'll write a song about this, we'll write a song about, they've got a list. And sometimes as a poet, I'm like, there's so much, all these injustices, it's almost like I want to put a big list on a wall and tick them off. How are you navigating that of going, there's so much to talk about in the world? Are you like trying to find the intersectionality, or is it a case of going, look, these subjects need their own pieces?
I think a lot about tempo. I think a lot about, you don't want it to be so heavy throughout, but I'm also very aware of the fact things are heavy right now, and I feel like shying away from it or like talking about stilettos and stuff is not really where I'm at right now. And I just feel like I'm just here, I've got a rough idea of what I want to perform, but at the same time for me it's about going with the vibe of what is in the space, the way the conversation's going. Poetry performance is a conversation, so I feel like I'll get a vibe of what other people bring to the table tonight. And of course, if you've got like 10 people talking about one thing, I'm not going to perform that poem. That's relative to it, because it doesn't, everyone can't perform about a specific topic. They can, but at the same time, I just feel like it's important to bring a new conversation into the table. I think it's, I try to, like, each poem is a journey in itself, and I just feel like some things cover a lot of ground anyway. But I just feel like today I just want to share new material as well. I'm excited to share more new material and just see the vibe of like how people receive it, because I feel like there's certain stuff like I've not even read back properly yet. I was reading back some stuff today and I was like, I want to share that, because sometimes you write and you don't even have the time to go back to it. You're just there. But I'm like, people need to hear it. So yeah, I'm excited to see what people feel.
I think that's so exciting, and that would terrify me. And I think it will be really exciting, and I'm looking forward to seeing you. And I think it talks to a sense of authenticity, like you said, that you're sharing yourself in that moment and the room that you're in, and you're able to flow and adapt whatever it is to be in, to share what you've got to say in that moment, where rather than rehearsing something to death and having it all laid down and structured, and which is totally legitimate thing to do, but really excited to see
we like it a bit raw, a bit messy, a bit playful. Like that's our vibe really, and I'm the same. Truth is, if I'm writing something, it can only be edited in the process of going out and performing. I'm all like, I don't want to learn this, because if I've learnt it, it's then going to become muscle memory. It needs to be written with that audience.
Like I think I always try to like perform and do some readings and then take it in that direction. But I also just think right now there's so many emotions in the air for a lot of people. But I also feel like there's certain perspectives that have not been brought to the table as much, like things that are happening in like Jordan, next door, what that looks like. But then I just haven't had the space to discuss that. So I feel like, okay, today I might want to talk about certain things and bring in like just a space my head was in January when I was in Jordan. So I feel like, there's a lot of different things to think about and to talk about. But I also think as a performer right now, it's not just about being an entertainer. It's also recognising tonight is a space for me to just be able to come to terms with certain things as well. And I think, it's not just that I'm here to like be like, hey, everybody be my therapist, but at the same time I'm like,
but it's the other way around actually. You being in a state of raw emotion and being able to share a complex range of emotions then allows other people to see it in themselves. It works both ways, that the therapy thing
definitely.
And also you said before, like, it's the heavy times that we're living in, but there's always also joy and anger and grief and and tiredness and flippancy and like all these. We're human, right? We can experience all these things at once, and it's always worth acknowledging that. Like I went on International Women's Day I pulled together. I spoke about this on the last podcast, but I don't care. I'm just going to talk about her forever because I just love her.
I'll just cut it out. It's fine.
Shut up. Gazan woman I call her Dr. Mona but that's her first name. But anyway, she's just this most inspirational, amazing woman. Came and spoke. She was in Gaza in October for several weeks and saw enough, and then managed to get out. She's the founder of a huge international foundation for Mecca. Do you know, the Middle Eastern Children's Association? So Amazing. She knows her stuff, and she was a doctor herself. Yeah. And she's like, I've tried to retire 4 times, but I keep on being dragged back to go to medicine. So she knows exactly what she's talking about and is telling everyone about it, but also making everyone laugh. And that woman was standing up there also saying, I've lost 100 of my relatives in the last 6 months. And she had more humanity and grace and good humour in her little finger than I think all the empires of this world has got, But when I just keep coming back to her as a point of wisdom and kind of allowing those complexities to live together. I can be feeling the most sorrowful and look on the outside the most cheerful, and vice versa.
I think definitely. There's a video of some of the kids in Gaza. They were like playing. There's like a roof that's fell off a mosque, and they were all climbing it and they were sliding down, and it just made me laugh because I was like, I remember being a kid and being at my grandma's and Eid, climbing a few steps, jumping off, and we'd climb more, like 5 steps, 6 steps, and we'd jump and stuff, or we'd just like roll down the stairs on our fronts, get carpet burns, and it just made me laugh. But I was like, that's fine. Like, okay, of course, it's not like the ideal scenario, but my friend was like really upset just seeing the video. But I was like, yeah, but the kids are still finding things to play with. Do you know what I mean?
But you never know when it's both of those two things can be equally true. The laughter response and the sad response, and you never know when it's going to hit you. I was going to the supermarket the other day. It was absolutely fine. I would say I was as neutral as I ever get, which is rare for me to just be like, I am going to the supermarket in like dog mode, I'm just doing this thing. And I saw a little family, some siblings I presume, on the pavement, and toddler falls over and bumps their knee, and older sibling gets them up and says, there, come on, off you go. Just like a most normal day-to-day thing. And for some reason I was a mess. I had to pull the car over and just was sat in the car park for like 15 minutes crying my eyes out, because there was something about the mundanity of that little interaction. For some reason, all the 50 horrific things that I'd seen that day hit me in that moment of just having a little girl fall over, bump her knee, and being picked up by a big brother. But you just never know, do you? We're all navigating this shit. And then those of you that can put words to that, I think it's a tremendous gift to be able to put lyricism to it and do that and perform it live and be that vulnerable in front of people is hugely important.
No, thank you. You just reminded me of something that I might perform later.
Once upon a time, there was a little girl and she fell over and bumped her knee. Was that it? Is that one of yours? No.
I'd just like to ask one last question before we finish up. It is a big one, though, is that we've been talking a lot about the duty of artists in the situation. I mean, the duty of an artist is always to speak truth to power, but especially in the current climate. And, you've been taking part in protests and reading poetry. And I was wondering about how much you want your visibility going, I am an artist who is here, and those conversations about bringing that art to those situations, bringing that space, almost in the same way someone should go like, I'm here and I'm a dentist and I care. I'm here and and I care. But why, for you as an artist?
I think that's really interesting to even put it in that comparison, because I feel like to be honest, majority of this time, especially till like early January, I was just like, what am I going to do, write a poem? Really? Like, it just felt, I was just used to get upset. I'd be crying. I'd be like, why didn't I do something like be a doctor or a nurse, or do something useful so I could at least do something like what Ghazan Abu Sitta's doing, or be able to do something like, what am I going to do? Go to Gaza and read poems? Like, really? Of course, I understand on the larger scale of things holistically, but, you know, when people need help, people need first aid and other kind of things. But I think I really like Ghazan Kanafani, and amazing Palestinian writer who was assassinated. But basically I was reading his work, I'd always like, I'm going to read his books in a beautiful place one day. I'm not going to rush to buy it. I love his interviews and stuff, but I want to read his intricate stuff in a beautiful place. So when I was in Jordan, I bought some of his books, and I was just reading them, and it made me cry. And, you know, he was like, he was always like about wujud al-mukawama, but about writing as resistance, you know? And I was like, I have to honour this. I can't be minimising it and acting like this ain't nothing. He's murdered like decades ago, but he still exists. We carry him around in our bags, you know what I mean? Like parts of him and what he had to say, and being from a refugee since the Nakba days. And, you know, like, I'm like, we can't minimise this just because I feel like, really? Like, even when I was speaking to my friend Nabil Al-Rai, who's a part of the Freedom Theatre as well, he was just like, and he lives in Arub camp in the West Bank, and he was like, when we spoke in October, November time on Outspoken's fundraiser for Medical Aid for Palestine, he was just like, well, no, I don't want to be an actor right now. I don't want to perform. I want to help with my hands. I really want to help with my hands. I want to do things like, I want to give them medicine. I want to give water. And that's what I mean, is like, there's a practical reality. Like, I always just think, one thing I don't respect, and I know it might sound really arrogant, but it's like artists or even academics who just speak about things that they have no connection to, no relation, like they don't do no grassroots work. I don't respect it, because I'm like, you're going to be a mouthpiece, but I never see you in the community when we need to do certain things, or you're not even like, people talk about Palestine on an abstract level. But like, you know, how they always say, like, there's going to be so many academics in years to come that are going to talk about decolonization, haven't mentioned anything to do with Gaza, and then they're going to write a paper in the future, and it's going to be like, shut up, because where were you when we needed people to call for a ceasefire? This is what I'm saying. So, like, you know, I'm like, there's times where you need to be a worker on the ground trying to do things, and there's other times where you can be the person articulating this, you know? It's the same when Grenfell happened. I tried to balance the two, but at the same time, writing for me is a way of processing. So I think there's a time and a place for certain things, but sometimes it just feels a bit, it feels a bit pointless, but it's not pointless. And I think today will remind myself, first and foremost, that it's not a pointless reality. And I think, you know, we have to do what we can in the ways that we can, which we're very limited, but at the same time, words are powerful. And I think we can't, I think it's a bit disrespectful of me to just like dismiss it as like, I'm not a useful tool.